So welcome to the SOS panels, everyone. I appreciate you guys coming out today. We've been putting in a lot of work getting all this ready. We've had a lot of people come in from far away. Specifically, this first panel, looking to the future, building a scene versus growing an industry, is kind of focusing on the ideas away from the industry side of our community. And we invited people from Tbilisi, from Buenos Aires, from the US, and we wanted them to be able to tell their stories and kind of show a different angle and perspective. So this is the first one that we're putting on. This is the first actual conference of the day. And I'm gonna hand the mic over to Shawn Reynaldo, who's gonna be our moderator today. And I just wanna thank everyone for coming out. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So as Zach mentioned, this is looking to the future, building a scene versus growing an industry. And just to get things started, in case you're not already familiar with any of the folks on stage, I'm just going to have each one of them basically introduce themselves and give a small amount of information about what it is you do and where you're from.
Hello, I'm Aaron Clark. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the States. I co-founded Honcho, which is a party, a queer party and festival, and Hot Mass, which is kind of a club / party that happens in a gay bathhouse below it in Pittsburgh. And it was sort of an accident that started from an ill-fated pride party that went wrong, where the police showed up like an hour before and shut us down. So we had a little backup venue that was just basically the size of like a closet below the bathhouse. And it went off amazingly. Like the energy was crazier than probably the original party. So we just kept running with it. And it eventually has slowly turned into a club. And we're about to have our 7-year anniversary in December. So it's kind of crazy.
Hi, my name is Tato Getia. I'm one of the founders of Bassiani, a club located in Tbilisi, Georgia, along with monthly queer series, Horror Nights, which is biggest queer party around the region. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Gonzalo Rios. I am promoter from Buenos Aires, and he's Joel Silva, the owner of Underclub Buenos Aires. It is a club located in Argentina. We started 6 years ago doing just party with local guests, and then we started to do international parties. We grow up against strict policy in clubs in Argentina that we have a VIP space and that stuff, and we grown up with the idea to do our own place with our own rules, that we can respect everyone inside the dance floor like we would like to do when we went to dance when we were a child.
So when people talk about the electronic music, especially the industry side of things, it's often perceived through this lens of major hubs, Berlin, London, New York. None of you guys are based in those cities. And before you got started, it felt like, at least for people that aren't from Pittsburgh or Tbilisi or Buenos Aires, that those aren't places that were necessarily on the map for electronic music. So I'm curious, when you got started, can you just tell us a bit about where the electronic music scene was in your city and how did you get started? I mean, Aaron, you already mentioned a little bit about the first party, but can you just give us a little more background and what made you want to keep it going?
Well, when I moved to Pittsburgh, first of all, Pittsburgh actually had a pretty robust scene in the 90s of like rave, like classic Midwest rave warehouse parties. They all sort of collapsed right when I moved to town around 2001. So my timing was off. And I just kind of, I was either going to move away, but I loved the city. It's really beautiful, actually. And I had a good job. So I found some friends and we just kept trying to do stuff. And so we did that for a while. And, they were like, the bar closing hours are 2 a.m. there. So everything was really short. And I don't know, it wasn't optimal. And slowly we just got sick of it. And we just kept pushing to like, we went from like trying to do these big parties into realizing that's maybe not worth it, and getting smaller and smaller and going more off the radar and finding weirder spaces to do stuff in, than just falling into the easy like clubs or bars that would have those hours.
So once you did the initial party that was in the closet-sized space, was it immediate? Did you immediately start doing more parties in that closet-sized space? Like, how did it become Hot Mass or Honcho?
Yeah, well, the energy was electric. The very first person to play it was Kirk DiGiorgio, and it was actually, we were just looking for a space to do small after parties after the larger things. It wasn't supposed to be the main event, but Kirk, it exploded. I'd never seen anything like it. The party went till like 8:30 in the morning, which until that point, we struggled to get Pittsburgh to stay out till like 3 or 4. Like it would always die by that point. So we were like, okay, there's really something here. And the bathhouse above us, the manager was, he was like an old Paradise Garage head. So he was like, you have to do weekly, you have to do weekly, you have to do weekly. And I was like, no, nobody wants to do a weekly. Like, this is terrible. So the compromise was, well, maybe it'll work if we get all the crews that are doing quality work in Pittsburgh together, and we all do like a monthly, and we each take a turn, and then we brand it. We'd kind of drop our crews' names and the party brands, and we just like kind of operate under this umbrella of Hot Mass. Maybe it'll work, and maybe it'll establish itself as the place to go. And it worked. So it's been evolving since then.
Tato, tell us a bit about what was going on in Tbilisi.
Yep. To answer that question, we need to go a little bit back in the history. History-wise, Georgia, and especially Tbilisi, was always home to a lot of different ethnic groups and cultural groups. And it was different place. But unfortunately, the 20th century was an era of isolation, obviously in terms of Soviet Union and being forced to be a part of Soviet Union. And it was a really brutal time, and it did a lot of damage in all the senses, and mostly in people's mind and conscious. And when towards the end of 20th century, we gained long-deserved independency. It was still very hard times because poverty was high. We had like in the last 29 years, we had like 4 wars, including a civil war, and including a war in 2008 when Russian troops occupied like 20% of the Georgian territory. Yeah, and especially in the late 90s, I mean, the poverty, the economical crisis, the hunger, this criminal, everything was really, really brutal. So it was really hard to, find your way out or do something, just come out of that, routine. But this way or that way, somehow some people, smaller scale, in underground, as you could say, where some movements were being, rising. And also, for example, there's quite a decent alternative music coming out from the time, and especially a lot of really, really nice electronic, experimental electronic music, which is even now till today, it's the top, highest level still. And we should say that, this way or that way, kind of this, not dancing, but something like this music and dance, maybe separately and here and there by point, it was still existing in Georgia. And in the early 2000s, there was also some kind of a big spark, in that sense. But then in the kind of late 2000s, tens, the thing got really cheesy, it was not interesting. It was empty of any context. It was just only about entertainment, which, but at some point, at least for me, it was obvious that if you would do things in a different way with a different approach, and if you would pass it to people in a proper way, it was possible to, to have really big changes. And first of all, I think why it was possible, because in all those eras, in all those years, like people were searching for safe places, which were not, people couldn't get it. And at some point when it became kind of like possible to have a, safe space for everybody, it boosted so for example, just a like really short example, if you just type on YouTube like 70th of May, which is like internationally day against homophobia, but in 2013 and 70th of May, around like 30 or 40 peaceful activists just came out in the streets to celebrate that day. And the church and radical movements came out in numbers of thousands. And you will see the most brutal, shots from it's still on YouTube, so you can, see it. But after just 5 years now, like it's possible to hold in that city, like, like monthly queer party series where thousands of people come into the party. And also out of that in the streets, the situation is changed. It's not like that anymore. Like people can walk or kiss or anything, So from my point of view, and just like for 5 years, like a lot has changed, and it's still going to.
But with that backdrop of all the history and repression, how did you start Bassiani? Like, how did you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can start a club now? Like, was it scary? Was it hard?
I think, like, first of all, it was because of music, and like me and my friends and others, like we shared like the ideas and vision, like how it should be. And first of all, for me personally, because I'm also doing bookings and stuff, it was mainly about music, and mainly that like I wanted to live back in my country, and. Yeah, but if you want to do something and if you want to live there, you also want to feel to change your surroundings. Yeah, not to be okay with everything, but just to try to start on a small scale. But like the final idea is for you and for your friends and family and like people to live in a safe and better and free environment. So when we started the club. I don't think it was not scary. I think we were pretty confident what we were doing from the very beginning. I'd say maybe not scary, but kind of like the most unknown moment was when we did the first queer party, and we basically did not know what to expect in any senses. Would it be from those same radicals in church, or just from such people like we didn't, or would queer people come to the party? But like since the first one, it's been perfect. And when you're so many, then like the radical movement is not so strong. It's just like they're strong when you're 3, 4, 5, but when you're standing together, we didn't have even one accident or incident around it.
Let's talk about Buenos Aires. I know electronic music was big there before your club started, but what made you guys want to start Underclub?
Yeah, sure. Well, we started Underclub 6 years ago, but to understand how is the electronic music movement in Argentina in general, we have to go back a few years back when early 2000 we have one incident in one club in Cromagnon. It's called Cromagnon. It was an incident where 200 people died. It was not an electronic party, but since then the government tried to combine the abuse of drugs with the music. And after that, a lot of prosecution from the government to the clubs were really strict at that moment. So it wasn't so many parties at that time. Only one club called Cocoliche, it's really known. And it's a small, just for 200 or 300 people was at that time. And then they shut it down, because it was so many restrictions for small clubs to being open, the curfew time, and the dollar prices. Also, the taxes, the tax pressure of the government is so high to keep running a club like successfully. and they shut it down. And then we started, because there is no other club doing it. And well, he started to do some parties on a club outside the city, on a really big club, and one of that rooms was on the club. And they started to do one booking, just once a month, and people started to go. Just the people wants to go to a place they can feel free, they can dance, they can be themselves. And they decided to move to the city, inside of the city. They rent a club. We built the club, but when he was talking about the music, I feel familiarized with that, because we do that because we love the music. It's really important for us. How we seen the scene growing on the last 5 years is amazing. Back on the days, we were just one club called Cocoliche, and now we have our club, and there is also almost 40 collectives, independent, doing parties, and it's really good to see how it's growing.
When you look at electronic music around the world, whether it's in smaller cities, bigger cities, it often feels like everyone's doing the same thing. People are following trends, booking whoever just got a feature on Resident Advisor or is on the DJ mag list or whatever it might be. So when you guys started your different spaces, did you have something specific in mind that you wanted to do that was different from what everyone else was doing? Like, was there a core concept at like the root? Why don't we start with you?
When we started, we really read the UR manifest, Underground Resistance Manifest. That for us was a really good thing to know where we are going to. And also our love for the music, the respect for the people, the dance floor, knowing that everyone inside the club is the same. We don't have beep space, nothing. So we believe that our love for the music, and we don't book for the numbers or for how many followers has an artist on Instagram. We know about music, we take care about music, and we book because of music, not because of money or numbers. Some nights are not successful on economic way, but it fell our heart, and that is more important than any money we can get.
Yep. In terms of what direction to go, that is a very simple answer. Just what our passion was in terms of music, what we basically liked, and that was the whole idea behind it. We didn't have we should follow this or follow that, but. What about the first question you asked? Yeah, that was totally new stuff for Tbilisi, like a very radical change, and we didn't start it little by little. We just started quickly. We announced the whole season lineup in one day, and everything was different. None of it was previously in any way common to Tbilisians, but. Also, at the same time, it appeared that people were ready for the change. In fact, they strived for it. So, when it was presented, people got it, accepted it, and then experienced it, and then got into it, and developed themselves very, very quickly. And actually, that's maybe one of the main reasons. Yeah, that now it's not only a local thing, but yeah.
What about at Hot Mass and Honcho?
I think there were a couple intentions. The first was with Honcho, which kind of drove the club. It was to kind of create a sex positive, gay queer space because there was really nothing like that, and it was a pretty repressed city sexually. There's a lot of sex shaming in the gay community. There wasn't really a hub for alternative gay culture. So I think that was the Honcho focus. And then for everyone else involved, which are straight people, really good ones, it was to have a place for our local residents to play long sets and in an environment that was tuned the way we wanted. Cause venues in Pittsburgh, they're just not built for what we want to do. Even though it was a tiny room, we wanted to like focus on the sound and focus on, and it wasn't great at the beginning, but the room was so good that, it was enough to get started. And I think those were the two main things. It wasn't to book headliners. We didn't have any money to book headliners. When the club holds 180 people and you can't sell drinks and you only charge $10, which is what we did at the beginning, that doesn't leave much room to like run a club or book headliners. So it just got so good that people started to ask to play.
Well, I'm curious, and this is for everyone, when you're starting a party and it's rooted in the music you like, which isn't necessarily music people know or DJs people know, there's been a long history of promoters doing this, ever since dance music started, and lots of times it doesn't work. So how do you get people to show up for DJs they might not know, music they might not know and aren't accustomed to hearing? Because like at the end of the day, you still need to get people in the door so it feels like a party.
Well, in this case, in our club, it's more focus in the place, not it's on the name. We do some nights. It's we have no lineup. The lineup is not shown, so nobody knows who's playing. Even the timeline, nothing. The people just go for the names. The people really trust, of course, to see new names. They trust in our work and the way we do things. So they know they're going to maybe they don't know the DJ, but they know they're going to have a good time there.
What about Bassiani?
Yeah, when you talk about the passion and what you like and stuff, of course there's a lot of other stuff that I would like to be able to do it, but at some point like it's your job to balance it in your mind and think about it, like what to present to people. And if you're just doing it within a closed mind and just booking what you like, that's not gonna work. And of course there are a lot of some different things I'd like to be able to do, but when in the end it's also about the party, about the vibe, and you should like keep some line. And in that sense, like it was possible for us to build like what we're doing and what our passion was, to combine it with like good parties. So when you do it and the music is good and people do like the music 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, then they trust you. And when they trust you, it grows bigger and bigger. And now, for example, and the trends are, for example, that maybe like a few years ago we had somebody who like basically not even one person maybe knew it in the city, but like then like we build around it, and now it's kind of they're filling the clubs because it's them. So yeah, just like you also have to have some other techniques too in your pocket.
I think you just have to provide the best space you possibly can that's super comfortable, that people want to be at, and there's like so many different ways to do that through door policies and behavior policies and what kind of like culture you cultivate inside of it. Ours was, we were doing the only thing late night that went all night, that had good sound, that had like gay people mixed with blending with, it was like such a diverse room. And that really doesn't happen that often in Pittsburgh. Even today, it's more and more now. I like to think that we helped like dent that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we were trying to do something that was totally different than anything else going on in the city.
Can you talk a bit more about that? I mean, I want to hear from all of you, because it seems like in all of your cases, like you book DJs you like, there's music you like, but creating a space and an environment is what makes your party or your venue successful. So how do you go about doing that? And is it taking notes from other spaces that you like? Is it about doing something totally original? I'm just curious, like, how do you go about creating a space that's special and unique where people want to be, regardless of who's playing?
Yeah, in that sense, you can never take example in case of Tbilisi, because especially by that times, by the beginning, it was like totally different kind of circumstances, which is like, I don't think it's possible for me to explain, at least in a few words. But that says that we just needed, really different kinds of approaches, because I don't like, generally as an idea, I don't like door policy, but on the other hand, like if you don't have a door policy, it is not possible to like have inside the vibe and the aura and everything as it has to be and as you want it to be. So you have to just accept it that you should have a door policy. But also in our case, like even for example, when you have a flight to Tbilisi, you will see that any other points, like people are standing in the queue, and like the flight to Tbilisi, the queue is like so we also had to implement with that like pre-sale service. But to implement the pre-sale service, we also needed to somehow like filter there too. So at the moment now, from the beginning, we had like these two ways of getting in the club. One is that people register on our website with name, surname, and I should say it's some social network ID, and then the group checks it, and some they give like some users like verified, others not verified. For example, at the moment we have around like 40,000 registered people, but only like a maximum 10K of it is verified user. It's not the best system. I'd like to, but as I've said, it's needed. And at the door at the door itself, like we have like door staff who kind of who are picking up, like again, I should notice I don't like separating and picking people like that. But if you don't have it, it's hard. Like at least like let's forget about the vibe and stuff. To at least to have a safe place. At least like not to have a fight inside or abuse or something. So in that sense, unfortunately, today it's possible, but I'm looking forward very much to a day when it will not be needed anymore.
So in our case, what it makes special, I think, if I will be a clubber, it's the treat of since the owner from everyone, I do the booking myself. I go to pick up the artist, I go to dinner with them, go then back to the artist. He's the owner, and he talks to every single people who goes inside the club, even the clubbers. Some clubbers has when they were under 20. They had a meeting with him personally to speak with him, to speak about the behavior you need to have inside the club, the respect with the entire environment, to have a successful party for everyone, everyone can be comfortable also. So the crowd see that we do our best for the night, not for the business. For us, having Function One in our club is the only club in Argentina that have this kind of sound system, and it's really a big effort for us to afford this cost, and we just do it because we want to have the best environment for the crowd. And also with music-wise, it's the same. We can just book one artist and do maybe one sold-out night and would be okay for us. But we like to combine acts that the people would see in Europe, that is not possible in our country. So I think that make special the place. The people really like, because they know we take care about more than the music and the people than the business. So I think,
also in that sense, what you're answering, we have also kind of the same approach, of course. Like it's like all of us, like so-called founders, we are also always on the dance floor, always on the dinner, everywhere. We are involved in it, and also we are like really, really friends with everyone. Like it's like a family, would it be staff or people coming? And also, as I've said, like even today's economic situation in Tbilisi is really, really bad, and unfortunately it goes bad too. Like its currencies, devaluating and all that stuff. And because of it, we also have, permanent list, which we give to people who are coming to the club regularly, and also maybe you know at some point that it takes quite a not a little amount to enter a club every Friday, Saturday. So daily we send around like 300 invitations, online invitations to the people who are regulars in the club. Yeah, you also see that in the website system. You also see like who is buying ticket, for example, for a long time, and when a person is coming on a regular basis, we just send them invitations all the time as a gesture, because it's the main point, to keep the community together.
The community together,
friends. So it's
We also do that kind of things, that people who's traveling far away from like more than 100 kilometers, they get free entrance for sure. Or sometimes we booked international artists and the entrance is food for people who live in the streets and that kind of things. I think it get closer to the community, do a better environment for everyone, I think.
What about in Pittsburgh?
There's like a couple of things. We tried a lot of tricks at the door. So in Pittsburgh, you can't really like tell someone they can't come in a club because you're going to have a fight or like some scene out front. This was a really dumb workaround that's still amazing to me. We post a password that changes every week on the Facebook event wall, like 30 minutes before doors open. And we kind of just use that as like where someone who might throw a fit at the door previously, if you're like, oh, you don't know the password, it's a private event tonight. They're like, okay. And it's like, well, that's it. So that like solved most of it, or at least like we kind of do these like oil slicks to like make people do a little bit of work. They have to like invest in it a little bit. It's not asking much to get on Facebook and look at that, but people are not that bright. They're coming from a bar at 2 a.m. They didn't do any work, and then there's also, we've never really posted like a set like list of club ethics. It's sort of just it just happens over time. We'll get people involved in running the door. We try to do like quick door shifts, an hour each, just to get people on lists so they have to do something to get in for free. But they're people that we trust and that come regularly, and they're part of the community. Same with the bar, which is a BYO thing, kind of. Lots of loopholes. But, everyone, once you sort of like set the tone, we found that the crowd sort of polices itself. And like, even though there's probably 50% brand new people or new faces, there's like nights when I don't know a single person in the club and I'm like, this is amazing. This never happened before. But they all sort of like, if someone's out of line, it quickly gets dealt with by maybe the person right next to them. And everyone's very understanding of that, which is kind of amazing.
This kind of gets to something that I wanted to ask all of you about, because once your clubs got past the beginning stage where it was like mostly people you knew coming and your friends, and it was like a family affair, at some point, it leveled up, the crowd grew, new people started to show up. I assume probably new booking agents contact you about wanting their artists to play. How do you grow something that is a small local scene without losing what made it special in the first place?
For us, we really, once headliners started to like really want to play, which was cool, we really tried to keep it focused on people that were in our sphere or that were like networked. So like Zach's a Midwest DJ. We've known him for a while. People that were like aligned musically with us, people that believed in the same things as us. Headliners, they weren't just like random headliners. And we also quickly realized we needed to put a lid on artist fees. So we set like an agreement policy, because we each book our own weekends, that we would, nothing over a certain level, we would not do it, no matter how much we wanted that artist, like, or loved them. If they didn't want to do it, then we probably didn't need to do that booking. There were just as many capable local DJs or regional DJs that deserved the slot and, you know, could really destroy the room that deserved that slot and understood what was going on. So, and that also taught us boundaries to place, to kind of like firewall from industry that was like creeping in.
Yeah, of course, it grew a lot since the first day, and of course, like I see around now, maybe third or fourth wave of people. You know, it's like changing always, not always, but time by time, it's impossible to have the same people for years, right? But also somehow it happens that let's say majority of the people coming to the club, at some point it still stays around the same, I'd say, values, or, you know, like it's still like you still have the, you know, same feeling. In some sense better because people learned how to party more and more better. So in that sense, it's really fortunate thing for us that it didn't lose its ideas behind it. And I think that is also because that, for example, like 5 years ago, when there would be like 2-3 parties per weekend in Tbilisi, and like one would be full, the others were failure, because it was like just not like the small number of people, you know, coming out at night. But now after 5 years, you can have 4, 5, 6 parties, including a big festival, and all of them full, because, you know, in this short period of time, a lot of things changed, and people's behavior, attitude changed, and their ideas of relaxing or going out or to be part of community or to share ideas and knowledge, like it changed for a lot. And also another big point why it's still possible and it's still growing in Tbilisi this moment is because just a little while ago nobody knew about us, and like as a country, as a people, or maybe knew in a negative way or something. So yeah, you could feel like a stranger in many places, or, you know. But now at the moment, like quite a few people know about us. I mean, like as a, you know, just regular Georgian person, and not as a club owner or clubber. And it's and the way they know us, it's connected to the identity we feel from all the time, and not like the Soviet times, and not the war or some this thing, but like the thing we feel inside us, and this thing, like, yeah, the identity we kind of like we feel we are into. So now anywhere, most parts of the world, like people know you in that same way, and that's why for especially Georgian youngsters, it became more precious and more precious. And for example, like just the one Georgian guy, for example, living in, let's say, Prague, and who had never anything common with the dancing or electronic music or clubbing, and like he's reading and seeing all these things about going on in Tbilisi, and for example, then he hears that DVS1 is playing at Bassiani, and then at some point DVS1 is playing in Prague too, in the city he lives in, and he goes there and he likes it and he engaged with it, and that's how it's like, you know, growing. And not only in Tbilisi in terms of like Georgian people, but all around the world because of that reason. Yep.
What about in Buenos Aires?
So, how was the question? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's just once you got started and established and it started growing, how did you grow the club and the audience without losing what made it special in the first place?
I think it was because since the very beginning, we been always focused about what we love to do, which is music, and we never lost the values because of that. You know, we became professional. The club became professional because, of course, more and more artists want to come, bigger artists, but our values were always the same. We don't treat artists, I don't know, who gets like a lot of money and someone who gets less money. For us, it's the same. They are artists. They have the same treat as their stars, believe they are not. believe they are or not, but for us it's always, they've been always the same. The crowd is always the same than artists. We are all the same people, artists, crowd, owners, booker. We are all people, and we treat always the same. That's why I think we didn't lose the values during the time, even with the hard economic times. We could do like VIP space to sell tables and get more money to do some profits out of the party. But we think that's not the way to go. The way to go is to keep our values, since it was the beginning. That's why we are here, because we trust with love for music and for our work bring us until here to Amsterdam to be talking with you.
You mentioned money, and Aaron, you've mentioned it as well. And I just want to touch on this a bit because, none of you are throwing parties in, New York or Amsterdam. You can't charge 30 euros to get in. Buenos Aires obviously right now is having a lot of issues with currency. Like, how do how do you keep a party going when you have a small budget to begin with, and then your currency is fluctuating?
Well, we are glad because we are a club with a good reputation, not only for the music. It's because we are good people, we people who you can trust. And even if sometimes we can't pay on time, or sometimes we have to pay in cash, or sometimes we have to do some things to bring artists to our club, they trust us because they know which kind of party we are doing, and it's not just about numbers. Maybe they get less money, maybe they get their money later, delayed, but they know what we do and they trust what we do, and they go and feel okay, feel good about it.
What about it, Bassiani?
I feel awful each time when I remind the currency devaluation, because it's been very hard for us because, for example, like the currency of dollar towards lari, like when we started, it was like 1.6. Now it's like 2.9. It's like not this kind of amount, but also a significant increase with euro. It's the same. And when we have all our costs like in euros or dollars, would it be even local costs like hotel costs or stuff? And yeah, it makes it pretty hard, and not only pretty hard, but it's sad because it's happening because of government's incapacity and unprofessionality and unskillfully managing things. And it's not that like we have to be like this. It's just like we are like this because there is nobody up there like doing at least like simple things. And in that sense, it's been really hard. But we are not paying like big fees or bigger fees than usual. We feel in ourselves like what's fair for everybody, for us and for them and for the city, and that's how we try to manage it. And being honest, the last periods it's been a bit hard in that sense because it's been like very, very like big depreciation of our currency, but it's manageable in a yearly basis. It's not a like tragedy, let's say.
At Honcho, are you guys, and Hot Mass, are you guys still following that budget agreement you made?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's just no room to go up, the club didn't get any bigger. Our operational budgets are pretty dialed in. We know exactly what to do, and they're always conservative because we know it could be either 160 people or 300, so we usually try to keep it lower because there's no bank to pull from if we don't hit numbers for a night. And then the bigger challenge has been making the upgrades that we need. When you don't sell liquor and we're not profiting a lot we can't really like build a huge bank to make large investments. So we've gotten creative. We crowdfunded a new sound system a couple years ago. We sold our glory hole naming rights. We sold a toilet naming rights. The Glory Hole's named Antonin Scalia Memorial Glory Hole, by the way. It was, like people from all over the country tossed us money. Smart Bar, the Further guys Together in Boston, they bought the Glory Hole. Like the U.S. kind of community rallied around that. So that's how we made a big purchase. I don't really know, where we go from here if we want to make larger things, because it's not like there's not really like, you can't go to the bank and be like, I'd like a loan because we did that. Look how well this underground, slightly legal thing is doing. They're not going to like buy that. So there's a big question mark of how we make improvements from here on, but it just survives for now.
You mentioned slightly legal, and I know that all of you have had interactions with the government, some more scary than others. But can you just talk a bit about how you interact with your local government or your national government and how that plays into running the club? Because I feel like lots of times, when you think about big festivals or big clubs, they have lawyers or they have people that are, already embedded in the government that can make sure they get all their permits, make sure there's no problems. I assume none of you guys are in that same position. So how do you make sure that the club stays open, and what's it been like dealing with the local police or the local government or whoever?
Well, we have only one guy who is in charge about government, because we need one guy in charge of everything about the government. They made inspections every month, sometimes twice. After Time Warp tragedy, like a few years ago, was more intense, bigger for small clubs, more for small clubs. But the biggest pressure that we have from the government is the tax pressure. It's really high, like 54%. It's like impossible to work with 54% of taxes.
They take 54% of your profits?
Yeah, total profits, a year. 54, it's a lot, yeah. Yeah, you cannot afford those numbers. It's not, you cannot run almost any enterprise in Argentina with those numbers. That's a problem that not only we are having, it's the entire country, And you have to find a way to avoid some taxes to survive, just to keep the club running. Basically, that's the biggest pressure that we have now. And sometimes the 2 weeks ago, one electronic party was shut down just because it was an electronic party. This kind of weird things still happening now in 2019.
How about in Bassiani? I mean, I think everyone remembers, it was in the news, international news a few years ago, but can you tell us a bit about what happened and how you've been dealing with it?
Oh no, we're perfectly legal. We're perfectly legal because there are no regulations in Georgia. Would be curfews or like some special alcohol licenses, unless you don't disturb any neighbors, and you can do whatever you like. So in an official side of it, we're perfectly legal. But what happened that day, and generally it was a part of like way bigger process. Yeah, we had and still have like such harsh like zero tolerance drug policy, and orientated not to take care of people, not to take care of the country, because like since the implementing that policy till now, the amount of heavy drug users like increased by 20%. So it's like pretty obvious it doesn't change anything, and at the time when the whole world like realized that the war on drugs was a failure, and they started to have a different approach. In Tbilisi, in that sense, we still have Stone Age. And what happened that, a lot of people, just simple people, like, and I think any like regular Georgian guy has one or two cases in family, or at least in their friends, that people were taken to prison, and then they had to make a plea deals, official plea deals, which like, and like when you're facing, for example, for rape, it's like from 4 to 7 years, but for having like some amount, so we don't also have this amounts, like, so for example, a little amount like leftover on a paper, it's already perceived as a big amount, and for a big amount of substances, the official, sentence is from 8 to 20 years. For example, like just a couple days ago, a guy was released from prison who was there for 5 years or 8 years. I don't exactly remember. A musician, and he was caught basically with 1 LSD. And that the sentence he served because, like, you need to have some people to make good plea deals, and if you don't have anybody to take care of you, you're in a worse situation. So what happened is that this thing and this zero tolerance drug policy got a huge backlash from the people because everybody realized that we never advocate any drug usage or something, but at some point, like, people are free in their own choices, right? And when you're not doing anything bad, rather than maybe having some like night out somewhere, and you're facing like a risk of not getting back home, but rather to spend the night in prison, that became like so huge thing. And it was like, it's hard to express in words how big it was. And this backlash, a big protest, and actually, like in the last 30 years, like there was never a big protest, like with tens and 15,000s of people, not organized by a political party, but rather for an idea. It's like not to overthrow government, but to rather like to ask them to change stuff. And it has like it had permanent protests gathering like from 10 to 15,000 people in the streets. So you can obviously, realize it's a big force, right? And what happened is that at some point before May, like a couple months before May, some substance arrived in the city, and it was killing people. People would basically take it and think that they were taking some maybe some stimulant, but in fact it was also mixed with opioids. So people would take it, then go home and die in their sleep. And when the first case happened, and because we have a lot of connections, and we found out about it, and obviously all of those people dying in their homes in their sleep. Yep. And when the first case happened, we were the first ones to, publish a big note that like some dirty substance, like killer substance, is in the streets, and people be careful, and to ask the government to take care of it. But of course, nobody did anything. So, like, the cases of death increased 1, 2, 3, and in fact, like eight people died until May. And to that point, it became such a huge thing that all of the medias were writing about it, and this was a big thing. And at that point, the government needed to find a sacrifice, somebody to blame it to. And with all of their controlled medias, yellow medias, they started like this campaign, and they were saying in the TV like all these people died in the Bassiani, and this all this stuff. So they found a scapegoat, a sacrifice in us. And at some point, when they did this like a huge show off, huge act, which was a political act, I think, that was to show off this conservative part of the nation, that like it's a place where it starts and coming out from, and that's what we're doing with them. So it was only political. Like, they knew perfectly that there was no any drug dealing going inside the club, because we are not stupid, right? When you're involved in such a big moments and you're responsible for so many people, and just like 10,000-15,000 people are coming out in the streets in order to stand with you, it would be just silly to do something like that, right? Other than to forget about other stuff. So they knew it perfectly, because in Georgia the most powerful institution is institution of the Ministry of Internal Justice, like the law enforcement institution since years, like they're even way stronger than the parliament. Yeah, so short stories, that's what happened basically, but they didn't calculate that it was already an important thing for Georgia's youth, and they would come out in the streets in such numbers. At that night, they caught 70 people outside of the club because people were protesting, including me. And they took us, everybody, like the 70 people in prisons around the country, and the prisons were so full that we had to, for example, me personally, I had to drive for 2 hours to go in another region in a police car to spend the night there. But then in the morning, when they had to release us because the counter manifest was already gathering in the city, yeah, it grew in big numbers, and yeah, that's a very sad part of what's happening in Tbilisi, and it shows perfectly like the amount of the level of responsibility and consciousness that our existing government has. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad that the club is still going. I think everyone is glad that you guys are still going after all of that. Aaron, I know the Pittsburgh story isn't quite as harrowing, but I imagine
chill. It goes back to the responsible crowds, there's always been an after hours culture in Pittsburgh, but they all get shut down. They all got shut down for years over and over because they just let anyone in, and they became like places to drink or do drugs, and there wasn't any other thing. Our crowds, we just kind of push that responsibility of taking care of each other on them, and we don't cause problems. The other thing that's in our favor is that Pittsburgh is very like any second tier Midwest city, desperate for like some cred of some sort. The government wants to be the next it city desperately, and it's really like tragic looking outside sometimes, but we don't cause problems, and because we occasionally generate a cool magazine headline, they're like, all right, well, keep doing it, no problems. And we're like, all right, they'll call and check up on us. We have a nightmare, but they're so busy with like nuisance bars that they're like, we love what you're doing, you're a piece of like city culture. Let us know if you need any help. We'll let you know if we hear anything that you need to be aware of, which is kind of amazing. And that phone call blew me away. But I think we need to do more of that. Interfacing, we can't be completely underground. It doesn't always like serve you well. I think, if this stuff is going to be taken more seriously in the US, promoters need to start interfacing with government, and being proactive about it and showing that like the value of what we do a little bit more. So we're still figuring out how to do that, but I think it's important.
All right. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time, but maybe if anyone in the audience has a question, we could do 1 or 2 audience questions.
Mine's pretty quick. We don't do too much. We put a Facebook event up. As long as we're doing our job and making the best, like, special thing, then the word gets out. It's on their radar. They keep coming. Also, we have a tiny room to fill, so it's easy for us.
Yep, I totally agree with you that in today's world, it's impossible to be like totally, out of the light and not to do anything. So yeah, we don't have anything like special. It's like Facebook, Instagram. We use it, but not at like at some limits. It's just like it's hard to explain in words, but yeah, we do have our direction and line in it. Like, so for example, like all of our residents, they never had any social media pages, and we ask them to do it because at some point you do need it. But yeah, within the limits, I think it's hard to explain in words really, but you should, I think, manage it somehow. Kind of, I'd say, kind of.
Kind of. I mean, for us, social media, it is important now on the 20th century. It is to promote our events like Instagram, Facebook, but most important is to take care about the environment inside the club. But the people can go there, but if it's not a good party, they won't come back again. Or if it is a good party, they can share it to their friends just to go there because it's a good place. It doesn't matter if you do the best promotion on Facebook or Instagram. The place and the party must be good as you promote it. I think.
And I realize I'm not on the panel, but I think the one thing that we can all take away is that like all of these people have built a place that's special. And like, it's not about who's DJing or like what record's going to get played. It's about having a community of some sense. And people go, you know, when they're in Tbilisi, they're like, I want to go to Bassiani. They don't even look who's playing. And same for Pittsburgh and same for Buenos Aires. So anyways, I think that is all the time we have. So let's all thank the panel.